What's up, y'all? I'm gonna do a reaction video to one of my favorite podcasts, the Lex Fridman podcast. It's just a 16-minute clip because the whole podcast is like 3 hours long. So I'm just gonna do a reaction to this 16-minute clip. Lex Fridman, he's a scientist and he's great. He has some of the best guests on. Um, Everybody from Elon Musk to Mark Zuckerberg to theoretical physicists. Everybody he has on here, really brilliant people. And he has a cognitive scientist on here um, named Donald Hoffman. I've seen brief little clips of him talking before, but I'm gonna get into this one. It's called "Humans Are Detached from Reality."
First of all, just in case people are not familiar with your work, let's sort of linger on the big, bold statement
Sure.
here,
hmm
which is the thing we see with our eyes is not some kind of limited window into reality. It is completely detached from reality, likely completely detached from reality. You're saying 100% likely. Okay, so none of this is real in the way we think is real, in the way we have this intuition. There's like this table is some kind of abstraction, but underneath it all there's atoms, and there's an entire century of physics that describes the functioning of those atoms and the quarks that make them up. There's many Nobel Prizes about particles and fields and all that kind of stuff that slowly builds up to something that's perceivable to us, both with our eyes, with our different senses, as this table.
See, this is about to get deep.
Then there's also ideas of chemistry that over layers of abstraction, from DNA to embryos to cells that make the human body. So all of that is not real.
It's a real experience, and it's a real adaptive set of perceptions. So it's an adaptive set of perceptions, full stop. We want to
So
think
the
that because
perceptions are real.
so their perceptions are real as perceptions, right? They are. We are having our perceptions, but we've assumed that there's a pretty tight relationship between our perceptions and reality. If I look up and see the moon, then there is something that exists in space and time that matches what I perceive. And all I'm saying is that if you take evolution by natural selection seriously, then that is precluded. That our perceptions are there. They're there to guide adaptive behavior, full stop. They're not there to show you the truth. In fact, the way I think about it is they're there to hide the truth because the truth is too complicated.
So I guess he's saying like we evolve to survive in this 3D material reality that we're in that we know is life. But we didn't evolve to actually see the real reality, the deeper reality. Our brains function, to to everything we see, we think this is the reality and this is the real reality, but this is just this isn't the real reality, is what he's saying. The physical isn't the real reality. I can imagine people like scientists, a lot of the reductionists and the materialists, I don't like this dude.
It's just like if you're trying to, use your laptop to write an email, right? What you're doing is toggling voltages in the computer. But good luck trying to do it that way. The reason why we have a user interface is because we don't want to know that quote unquote truth, the diodes and resistors and all that terrible hardware. If you had to know all that truth, it would, your friends wouldn't hear from you. So what evolution gave us was perceptions that guide adaptive behavior, and part of that process, it turns out, means hiding the truth and giving you eye candy.
So,
Damn.
what's the difference between
So like we're in a matrix, basically, is what he's saying, and we think this is the real reality of the material world. I mean, from what I've heard about, quantum. I mean, I already have that kind of like belief spiritually, and so like, a lot of spiritual people do have kind of said that, and I guess he's saying mainstream science is starting to catch up to that. But I'm sure there's people in the scientific community that disagree with him. But I mean, when you just learn about quantum physics, and it seems like, okay, like, yeah, that you know,
hiding the truth and forming abstractions, uh, layers upon layers of abstractions over low level voltages and transistors and chips and programming languages from assembly to Python that then leads you to be able to have an interface like Chrome where you open up another set of JavaScript and HTML programming languages that lead you to have a graphical user interface on which you can then send your friends an email. Is that completely detached from the zeros and ones that are firing away inside the computer?
It's not. Of course, when I talk about the user interface on your desktop, there's this whole sophisticated backstory to it, right? That the hardware and the software that's allowing that to happen. Evolution doesn't tell us the backstory, right? So the theory of evolution is not going to be adequate to tell you what is that backstory. It's going to say that whatever reality is, and that's the interesting thing, it says whatever reality is, you don't see it. You see a user interface, but it doesn't tell you what that user interface is, how it's built. Right now, we can try to look at certain aspects of the interface, but already we're going to look at that and go, okay, before I would look at neurons and I was assuming that I was seeing something that was at least partially true. And now I'm realizing it could be like looking at the pixels on my desktop or icons on my desktop, and good luck, going from that to the data structures and then the voltages, and good luck. There's just no way. So what's interesting about this is that our scientific theories are precise enough and rigorous enough to tell us certain limits, and even limits of the theories themselves. But they're not going to tell us what the next move is, and that's where scientific creativity comes in. So the stuff that I'm saying here, for example, is not alien to physicists. The physicists are saying precisely the same thing, that space-time is doomed. We've assumed that space-time is fundamental.
Damn.
We've assumed that for several centuries.
And people don't realize. I think people don't realize where mainstream science is at right now. Like, if you talk about this stuff, people think you're just like crazy, but it's like they don't realize, like, mainstream science is on this now, like, it's like we're in a simulation. I think it's like a spiritual simulation, not a simulation by robots. You know what I mean? I think, yeah, but it's not the real reality. And that's what I believe. That's what a lot of people that do psychedelics are shown. Ayahuasca, magic mushrooms. I've been dreams have communicated this to me. But people don't. There's a lot of people that don't take that stuff seriously. But now you have the scientists coming out and saying it. You know what I mean? Or alluding to that. I'll see where it goes, but you know what I mean? So that's, yeah.
And it's been very useful. So all the things that you were mentioning, the particles and all the work that's been done, that's all been done in space-time. But now physicists are saying space-time is doomed. There's no such thing as space-time fundamentally in the laws of physics. And
Wow.
that comes actually out of gravity together with quantum field theory. It just comes right out of it. It's a theorem of those two theories put together. But it doesn't tell you what's behind it. So the physicists know that their best theories, Einstein's gravity and quantum field theory put together, entail that space-time cannot be fundamental, and therefore particles in space-time cannot be fundamental. They're just irreducible representations of the symmetries of space-time. That's what they are. So space-time, so we put the two together. We put together what the physicists are discovering, and we can talk about how they do that. And then the new discoveries from evolution of natural selection. Both of these discoveries are really in the last 20 years. And what both are saying is space-time has had a good ride. It's been very useful. Reductionism has been useful, but it's over. And it's time for us to go beyond.
When you say space-time,
And to me that seems clear, but I think a lot of these scientists, there's still scientists that are attached to that like materialistic view, reductionist view, and I think their egos just don't want to like, because I feel like there's been a lot of materialist scientists that kind of like have shit on these kind of views that spiritual people have been saying, and then to have to humble yourself and be like, after you talked all that shit, it's got to be hard to like humble yourself and be like, yeah, we were wrong. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm sure there's a lot of egos that just don't want to. But one thing I respect about science is like, it's more humble. I feel like they're more humble than a lot of religions, because they will, even if they kind of go kicking and screaming, they'll admit it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, I respect them. You know what I mean? I respect that.
time is doomed. Is it the space? Is it the time? Is it the very hard-coded specification of 4 dimensions? Or are you specifically referring to the kind of perceptual domain that humans operate in, which is space-time? You think like there's a 3D, like our world is 3-dimensional and time progresses forward, therefore 3 dimensions plus 1.
When I like a few years ago, I did mushrooms, and on mushrooms, what was communicated to me was that everything looks like physical, but reality is rarely like waves and fluid and like water and like vibrations, and it really has a fluid motion to it, and it's geometrical. But anyway.
In 4D. What exactly do you mean by space-time? What do you mean by space-time is doomed?
Great. So this is, by the way, not my quote. This is from, for example, Nima Arkani Hamed at the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton. Ed Witten, also there. David Gross, Nobel Prize winner. So this is not just something the cognitive scientists, this is what the physicists.
And yeah, like this isn't woo-woo type stuff. These are the some of the smartest minds in science. Like I know Edward Witten, and he's considered, and he basically said like, yeah, this is like a you can call it what you want, like a magical matrix of like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like people don't realize, people are still living in their minds like it's like Newtonian physics, and it's like, nah, man, like that's old shit. Like we're in a divine matrix. I just think they don't want people. I just feel like there's a lot of people that, and the mainstream just don't want people to know that. You know what I'm saying? So they're like fighting it. You know what I mean? It's a matrix.
Is what we're saying.
Yeah, the physicists are space-time skeptics.
Yeah, they're saying that, and I can say exactly why they think it's doomed, but what they're saying is that, because your question was, what aspect of space-time, what are we talking about here? It's both space and time, their union into space-time, as in Einstein's theory. That's doomed. And they're basically saying that even quantum theory, this is with Nimar Kani-Hamed especially, so Hilbert spaces will not be fundamental either. So that the notion of Hilbert space, which is really critical to quantum field theory, quantum information theory, that's not.
Yeah, I think reality is just too magical and really just hard for our like human brains to even like, especially the rational mind, the logical mind. It's too, I feel like the creative mind can grasp it a little better, but the logical mind, it just doesn't, just can't compute. And a lot of these people are just, they live in that logical mind. But I believe, reality is beyond that. It's
not going to figure in the fundamental new laws of physics. So what they're looking for is some new mathematical structures beyond space-time, beyond Einstein's four-dimensional space-time or supersymmetric version, geometric algebra signature 2, 4 kind of. There are different ways that you can represent it, but they're finding new structures, and by the way, they're succeeding now. They found something called the amplituhedron. This is Nima and his colleagues. The cosmological polytope. There are these like polytopes, these polyhedra in multi dimensions, generalizations of simplices that are coding for example, the scattering amplitudes of processes in the Large Hadron Collider and other colliders. So they're finding that if they let go of space-time completely, they're finding new ways of computing these scattering amplitudes that turn literally billions of terms into one term. When you do it in space and time, because it's the wrong framework, it's just a user interface. That's now from the evolutionary point of view. It's just user interface. It's not a deep insight into the nature of reality. So it's missing deep symmetry. It's something called a dual conformal symmetry, which turns out to be true of the scatter.
That's gotta be humbling. You know what I mean? Because you just gotta admit your ignorance. And I feel like a lot of people just don't have the humility. People like to pretend that they know more than they know. I'm guilty of it. You know what I'm saying? But you gotta have some humility. I mean, this reality is fucking weird. People just, I guess it just makes us feel unnerved to admit there's so many mysteries and there's possibilities. I think a reality is just unfathomably crazy. I think we're just seeing a small, like just a teeny tiny bit of reality. And our minds, I just think there's just multiple dimensions of unimaginable things.
Data, but you can't see it in space-time. And it's making the computations way too complicated because you're trying to compute all the loops and Feynman diagrams and all the Feynman integrals. So see, the Feynman approach to the scattering amplitudes is trying to enforce two critical properties of space-time: locality and unitarity. And so when you enforce those, you get all these loops and multiple, different levels of loops, and for each of those you have to add new terms to your computation. But when you do it outside of space-time,
I believe consciousness can be like non-local. Like we think consciousness is just the body, but I'm gonna make another video. Um, but I believe it's consciousness is non-local, and it's much more complex than we think, and we are much more complex. And I had a dream where I was. This is gonna sound completely crazy to some people, and that would have sounded crazy to me if I hadn't experienced it. I never could imagine it was possible, but I had a dream that, like I was in this, had this dream where I was the villain, and the villain was stalking the kind of like victim, the prey, and I was the villain, and I was the victim, and then I was the consciousness watching it all, detached. Just the invisible consciousness, and in the dream, I kind of like. It took me a while to realize that I was all three of them at the same time, and that's something like I can't. You only can have to experience it. Like I couldn't even imagine that was possible, and then it kept, and then until I finally realized like what the, because when I was the villain, I was completely the villain, and when I was the victim, I was completely the terrified victim. And then when I was the detached consciousness, I was detached consciousness, just observing. I wasn't judging anything. I was just observing it. And then something, and as I was going through this cycle, it finally clicked. Like, wait, the fuck? I'm all of them? How is that? Like, I don't know. But other people have on psychedelics have talked about that, in different kind of like experiences. So I'm like, okay, like, but that, I had that experience in the dream. I never had that experience on a psychedelic. But it was crazy. And if you completely think that's impossible, I get it. I would have too if I hadn't experienced it. But things are possible that you wouldn't imagine. And so I think we're you know. But anyway, let me get back into this.
you don't have the notion of unitarity. You don't have the notion of locality. You have something deeper, and it's capturing some symmetries that are actually true of the data. And you don't have the notion of unitarity. You don't have the notion of locality. You have something.
So like he's saying something deeper than locality, because we think it's like, think it's like, oh, that thing is there. Consciousness is the body attached to the body, and it's like, nah, it's non-local. It's deeper than that. Deeper than the unity.
Deeper, and is capturing some symmetries that are actually true of the data. But then when you look at the geometry of the facets of these polytopes, then certain of them will code for unitarity and locality. So it actually comes out of the structure of these deep polytopes. So what we're finding is there's this whole new world now beyond space-time that is making explicit symmetries that are true of the data that cannot be seen in space-time, and that is turning the computations from billions of terms to one or two or a handful of terms. So we're getting.
And some of this I don't catch on, you know what I mean? I can catch, the gist of it, but yeah, some of it is just over my head terminology that I don't even understand. I'm not even going to front.
Insights into symmetries, and all of a sudden the math is becoming simple because we're not doing something silly. We're not adding up all these loops in space-time. We're doing something far deeper. But they don't know what this world is about. So, they're in an interesting position where we know that space-time is doomed, and I should probably tell you why it's doomed, or what they're saying about why it's doomed. But they need a flashlight to look beyond space-time. What flashlight are we going to use to look into the dark beyond space-time? Because Einstein's theory and quantum theory can't tell us what's beyond them. All they can do is tell us that when you put us together, space-time is doomed at 10 to the minus 33 centimeters, 10 to the minus 43 seconds. Beyond that, space-time doesn't even make sense. It just has no operational definition. So, but it doesn't tell you what's beyond. And so they're just looking for deep structures, like guessing. It's really fun. So these really brilliant guys, generic, brilliant men and women who are doing this work, physicists, are making guesses about these structures, informed guesses, because they're trying to ask, well, okay, what deeper structure could give us the stuff that we're seeing in space-time, but without certain commitments that we have to make in space-time, like locality and energy. So they make these brilliant guesses, and of course, most of the time you're going to be wrong. But once you get one or two that start to pay off, and then you get some lucky breaks. So they got a lucky break back in 1986. A couple of mathematicians named Park and Taylor took the scattering amplitude for 2 gluons coming in at high energy and 4 gluons going out at low energy. So that kind of scattering thing. So like apparently for people who are into this, that's sort of something that happens so often you need to be able to find it and get rid of those because you already know about that and you need to. So you needed to compute them. It was billions of terms. And they couldn't do it, even for the supercomputers couldn't do that for the many billions or millions of times per second they needed to do it. So they begged, the experimentalists begged the theorists, please, you got it. And so Park and Taylor took the billions of terms, hundreds of pages, and miraculously turned it into 9. And then a little bit later, they guessed one term expression that turned out to be equivalent. So billions of terms reduced to one term, the so-called famous Park-Taylor formula, 1986. And that was like, okay, where did that come from? What? This is a pointer into a deep realm beyond space and time, but no one, what can you do with it? And they thought maybe it was a one-off, but then other formulas started coming up, and then eventually Nima Arkani Hamed and his team found this thing called the amplituhedron, which really sort of captures the whole, a big part of the whole ball of wax. I'm sure they would say, no, there's plenty more to do. So I'm.
This is really like kind of like amazing time to be alive too, because it's kind of like you can start to put, if you really want to know, you can really start putting stuff together. Like you have what the science is saying, you have what people on psychedelics are saying, you have what the spiritual people are saying. You know what I mean? You can like start to put stuff together if you want to. If it's if it's important enough. There's still gonna always be that doubt there because like I feel like the logical mind just can't. Reality is just kind of too magical and crazy that it's just like it just can't be. It just can't be. But nah, we're in the middle of something deep. Like we're a part of something huge to the point that it's crazy. And I think that's why people just kind of like want to believe that it's just nothing. It's just like, oh, like just, it's just meaningless. It's just like stuff just happened to happen and here we are. And then I think that's a little, for some people, that feels a little safer than to really realize we're a part of something like just immense. Like that can kind of drive you crazy when you contemplate that. But anyway, let's get back into this.
Won't say they did it all by any means. They're looking at the cosmological polytope as well. So what's remarkable to me is that 2 pillars of modern science, quantum field theory with gravity on the one hand, and evolution by natural selection on the other, just in the last 20 years have very clearly said space-time has had a good run. Reductionism has been a fantastic methodology. So we had a great ontology of space-time, a great methodology of reductionism.
He said you had a good
Now
run.
it's time for a new trick. But now you need to go deeper. and show. But by the way, doesn't mean we throw away everything we've done. Not by a long shot. Every new idea that we come up with.
What's that atheist scientist? I know he gotta hate it because it's like, yeah, it's like that reductionist view. It's like, let's move on. You know what I mean? But this video is called "Humans Are Detached from Reality," like the real reality. Like we think this is the real reality. We don't know. Like we're completely detached that there's actually this isn't. I mean, this is real. It's real enough. It's an experience. But it's not the deeper reality. Is what I mean? So you say we're detached. We think this is. People are obsessed with the materialist, or like they're obsessed with like their legacy and material things and all this, and it's like this ain't shit. Like this shit is fake. Like this ain't the real reality. And a lot of fucking egos ain't gonna like that. But if you don't want to accept it, I guess you don't have to. You know. You can, but you're the delusional one. At this point.
Beyond space-time must project precisely into space-time.
Like, because it tries to, like, people will try to, like, make it like the spiritual people are the delusional ones. And it's like, nah, you're the, or, you know what I'm saying? Or the people that aren't materialists, and it's like, nah, you're the delusional one. I always got to talk my shit. I don't know why. It's just so, people is gonna hate me.
I mean, it better give us back everything that we know and love in space-time, or generalizations, or it's not going to be taken seriously, and it shouldn't be. So we have a strong constraint on whatever we're going to do beyond space-time. It needs to project into space-time, and whatever this deeper theory is, it may not itself have evolution by natural selection. This may not be part of this deeper realm. But when we take whatever that thing is beyond space-time and project it into space-time, it has to look like evolution by natural selection, or it's wrong. So that's a strong constraint on this work.
So even the evolution by natural selection and quantum field theory could be interfaces into something that doesn't look anything like you mentioned. I mean, it's interesting to think that evolution might be a very crappy interface into something much deeper.
That's right. They're both telling us that the framework that you've had can only go so far, and it has to stop. And there's something beyond. And that framework, the very framework that is space and time itself. Now, of course, evolution by natural selection is not telling us about like Einstein's relativistic space-time. So that was another question you asked a little bit earlier. It's telling us more about our
DMT is something that, if like they call it the spirit molecule, and everybody that does that say it's like yeah, this is a simulation. This is nothing to what's out there. Like what's out, like beyond this is so crazy and mind-boggling. Like people that do DMT say this reality looks fake compared to that reality. When they do DMT, they say that takes them to the real reality, and this reality looks just like a fucking fake bullshit. Like, you know what I mean? Once they see the real reality, that's crazy. And everybody that does it, I don't care if it's like they're atheist or whatever, they say like, yeah, there's more. There's a lot more, to the point that it's like terrifying to the human ego. You know what I mean?
Conceptual space and time, which we have used as the basis for creating first a Newtonian space versus time as a mathematical extension of our perceptions. And then Einstein then took that and extended it even further. So the relationship between what evolution is telling us and what the physicists are telling us is that, in some sense, the Newton and Einstein space-time are formulated as sort of rigorous extensions of our perceptual space, making it mathematically rigorous and laying out the symmetries that they find there. So that's sort of the relationship between them. So it's the perceptual space-time that evolution is telling us is just a user interface, effectively. And then the physicists are finding that even the mathematical extension of that into the Einsteinian formulation has to be as well not the final story. There's something deeper.
Man, some people are just so fucking smart. It's just ridiculous. I don't know how they stay sane. Contemplating like stuff like this. But I think it's just fascinating. Alright. Hope y'all enjoyed this. I'm gonna do a couple more videos with this guy, you know. But yeah, it's fun for me. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Peace.